Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Pradeep from Arm Wrestling News, and with me is our guest, Mr. Paul Linn. And today we are going to discuss Monster Factory 3 event, which was held on Saturday, and it was a big success. Many great matches on the card. We are going to discuss that. What was the good things about the event? What can Monster and Mrs. Monster improve on that? And what should we do to help the event? And much more. This is the first part of this interview on this channel, and second part you are going to see on Paul Linn's YouTube channel. So please already subscribe to that, because we are going to release both parts almost simultaneously, maybe with the 30 minutes gap. So how have you been, brother? Like, how's life going?
Good. Back to training. My arms are still sore from the after pull. So even a little flex hurts right now, but it's good pain. Good pain, not bad structural pain.
Can you take a
Things are
guess,
good.
like, what made me become your fan? It was almost 4 years ago, I guess. You said something on a podcast that immediately turned me into a fan.
I have no idea. I say a lot of dumb stuff. I never know what people remember. No
I
clue.
still, even I don't know. Maybe it was the hand grip, hand control worldwide YouTube channel. I forgot the
Mm,
names of Joshua Grant and one other guy. I
yeah,
forgot his name.
pain
So
control. Yeah.
I think you were on that podcast, and they were talking about something along the lines of throwing expired supplements. And you were like, give them to me all day. If you have expired
Yeah.
supplements, give them to me. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that.
It's interesting. I would have never guessed that. Man, I grew up on expired food. Everything, I mean, food bank food, none of that. All it was all out of date. They don't put those dates are for show. Those
Yeah.
dates are for sell by dates. Are you can take whatever like the duration of that date is and times it by three. It'll
Yeah, sometimes I'm like we have curd, yogurt as you would call it. I think it's the same thing, and it says the expiry date is 10th of December, and today it has been in the freezer, but now today is 13th of December, and my wife would be like, okay, let's throw it away. It has been expired for 3 days. Nope, let me test it first.
yeah,
If I can eat it, then it is worth it.
yeah. Dairy's a little bit tricky. Dairy's a little bit tricky, but I mean, even milk, you got to give it the smell test before you waste it. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, of course. Like, it is going to get sour in my stomach anyways. It contains acid. Let me drink it.
Right. There's a whole, and I mean, Devin made a video about it. I think it came from Paul Cohen, the tennis pro, about like eating, raw foods, raw diet, and like semi-spoiled things to build like immunities and stuff. So there's
Yeah.
a whole school of thought behind it. That's a little bit extreme for me, but I get where it's coming
I think that's Paul. We are getting completely off topic here, but that is most of it has to do with cultural aspect as well. Because when I like see foreigners, for me, foreigners, anyone outside of India, I hear them talking about things like lactose intolerance. I have never seen a person in my life around me who is lactose intolerant.
from.
I have never seen one. I
I,
physically never seen
I
one.
grew up with it. I grew up with it. Yeah, it was terrible. I kind of contribute that to like my faster metabolism at a young age because everything was just running through me. I was lactose intolerant, didn't know it, and I'm drinking milk every day, eating ice cream, doing whatever. So everything would just run through. I don't think much got absorbed.
Yeah, but
But as I got older, I got a little bit more tolerant to it.
Yeah, but that can be a generational thing as well. I sometimes see somebody would drop their ice cream on the floor and they would just throw it away just because it was dropped on the floor. Well, there are people stepping on this like they're wearing shoes. Shoes are dirty. I don't care if you cannot
Yeah.
tolerate that much, you're never going to have a good immune system.
Yeah, it's the 5 second rule, man. You got 5 seconds to pick it up, blow it off, and eat it. It'll be all
Yeah.
right.
All right. So, Paul, how was the event? Like, what are the things that you absolutely enjoyed about the event? What did the monsters do well?
Super professional. I mean, I got to catch some of the matches and stuff. I didn't watch the entire stream because it is like 3 hours long, but I went back. Obviously, some audio things here and there, but like the production quality that they do for an event out of their own house is incredible. I mean, it's amazing to me the amount of people that they fit in there, and the level of production that they fit in their gym there in their house. Rebecca's just running around like with her head cut off, like just trying to scramble to make everything work. But they're very hyper focused on the presentation aspect, which I think is really important. And I think they're getting better as they go. And it's one of those things where anytime you host an event of any kind, your stress level goes through the roof. And then you're like, why am I doing this? I'm never doing this again. And it's like every time they get done, it's a success. And they're like, okay, let's do another one, you know? So they did an amazing job, as they always do. And they really put it all on the line. I know there was some sponsorship struggles at the end. So they were running a risk of losing money, like maybe 10K in the red. But Michael seems to just make those things happen last minute. But I don't think, that's the beauty of it too. Like I love the business model. As long as you can get the sponsorships, but the more athletes you get, the more matches, the more overhead, the more you have to cover. At the end of the day, most of this stuff is really a labor of love, on both ends, whether it's pay-per-view or they're doing it the free route like Michael and Rebecca do.
And the feeling about quitting the event that you just mentioned about Michael and Rebecca, it is going to happen always. Like, we have not seen an East versus West event after which Engin Terzi has not told us that he's going to just stop everything now. That was the last event that he organized. It always happens. It is going to happen until the organizer, the promoter, is personally and emotionally invested with the athletes. Like court sports, with court sports, it is a different deal. King of the Table, it is a different deal. The main guys, sometimes you don't even see them, where they're always behind the scenes. So maybe they are not that much emotional about it. Of course, even if they think about quitting something, like when Steve Kaplan, like he stopped WL, nobody heard about it. He didn't make any announcement. He didn't come on a live and say that, guys, I'm having too much headache and I'm going to stop this, because he was not personally, like, he was personally invested but not emotionally invested in the game. So what do you think about
that's the difference about what we have going on now with Engin and Michael, even King of the Table. We have like arm wrestlers that are in the community that care about the other arm wrestlers. They genuinely care about putting a good product out there for the arm wrestlers from the perspective of an arm wrestler. Now, I think that the WAL is beautiful because it was basically sheerly business. I like that as well, but I understand the difference, and that caused what we saw. The money fell out, the sponsors fell out, and it was like, okay, it's off, and no questions asked, no explanations given. That's the business perspective. But from every time we host an event, man, I'll tell you, we're doing our best. We want to please everybody, and it's impossible. And I've said it to Engin before, you can't make all the people happy all of the time. You just got to do your best and then let the rest roll. But when you're coming from an emotional perspective where you're trying to please people, very, very stressful. I'll never forget, I think it was the first Keystone State Championship that we hosted. Either the first or the second. We had it in a bar, and we didn't project the amount of entries correctly. So we were like understaffed, and the place was packed. And the tournament was running forever. It was like 10 p.m. and we had our second arm break. And I looked at my James, my partner. I was like, dude, can we just refund these guys? I can't handle this. You know what I mean? And he was like, just put your nose down and let's finish the damn thing. And after it was all said and done, like, of course, there were some complaints, but most people understand the variables that you're battling. So most people, the people who have their finger on the pulse, understand the struggle. So that's a saving grace to it all.
Yeah, it's worth it. And what are the feedbacks that you would like to give them? I would like to start with myself, because it can sometimes make the guest, like, it can make it easier for them to give some feedback that they wouldn't be willing to share otherwise, because sometimes it can be taken negatively, as we've seen in the past as well. So my feedback was, first of all, number one thing that comes to my mind when I talk about Monster Factory 3 is under promoted. It did not seem to me that Michael and Rebecca were interested enough in promoting their own event. Reasons for that could be, number one, it was not a pay-per-view. If it is a pay-per-view, you are interested, you are motivated, you are driven till the end. Even after the event has started, you are still requesting people to purchase the pay-per-view because you are invested in that, and most of the effort that you have done, most of the work that you're going to do depends on that last day. We have heard from core sports like 80% of the sales come in the final 24 hours. So this is the reason why you are driven till the end. But once you go the other route as Michael and Rebecca, where you have already sold the rights to your event, you're through sponsorships, maybe you're not that much motivated because you know you are going to get that money. It may affect the money that you're going to get in the future, but this one, you have already finalized your deal any efforts that you are going to make after that, they are not going to financially support you. Is this
I
assumption
don't,
correct?
I don't disagree with you. I think that it could be promoted a lot better. I think there's a lot of factors involved in that. Number one being Rebecca and Michael are incredibly busy. And I mean, anybody can say that. You know, I say it all the time, but I see what they're doing. And they're making their livelihood off of social media, arm wrestling, and all their different avenues. That's how they're paying the bills. So they have competing priorities. You know, when you talk about like YouTube revenue, Facebook revenue, if they're not constantly putting their own content out, that their numbers drop. And I think they were going through that. Plus, Michael's doing all this travel, like he's all over the place. So it's really tough to promote from that aspect. Now, the athletes, I think, shared as much as pretty much we could, you know, but there's the other piece of when you have East versus West only 3 weeks prior, it's really tough to compete with the promotion of that. And there's also part of you that doesn't. Like let's let that run its course. And then when the hype dies down from that, now let's step in, which I think they did a pretty good job in the last week. And I think their viewing numbers, I mean, they lost the John Brzenk match. So definitely going to hurt the viewing numbers. There's no way around that. But they did better than they expected. So Rebecca, like the night of, was spitting out like the real time, you know, and the current views and all that good stuff, and the impressions and all like the you know the analytics that come along with YouTube. And she was happy with what it did in comparison to what the expectations were. So could it be promoted more? Sure. You know, is there a better way to do it? Probably. But right now, I see what they have on their plate, so I understand, you know, from that perspective of why it's hard.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to express my feelings, like what I feel my responsibility or responsibility of people like me, YouTubers like me, should have been in this case. But before that, I'd like to mention the topic that you mentioned earlier about losing money, promoters losing money. Sometimes people think like, well, what if he lost $500? Not a big deal. Like, we got to enjoy this match, the brand got bigger. But it is not only about that. Let's assume if I go to Turkey and the cost of me staying there for 4 days, including travel, everything, let's say it adds up to $1,000. It is not only $1,000. If I stayed in my home, didn't do anything, just did some live stream commentary and did some result videos, I would be making $1,000, maybe more than that. So now it is 1,000 plus another $1,000 if I'm not allowed to record anything there. Now I'm down $2,000, plus if the channel could have gained 1,000 subscribers in that period, now it has gained only 100, 200 subscribers. So if you add those 1,000 subscribers that I could have potentially gained and another couple of $1,000, that for me, for especially considering where I'm living, that adds up to a lot. And it can be the same for promoters as well. They could have been doing something else during that period of time. Instead of organizing a big event and losing $1,000, they could have trained themselves and flown to some event where they could have charged $5,000, $10,000 for competing there. Let's just assume Angie lost $1,000 in organizing East versus West 3. I'm just giving a number. Like, it's not real, but I'm giving you a number. Instead of doing that, Angin could have flown to Dubai for King of the Table, charged them $5,000 as fees, and earned $5,000 and won a super match. So that is a big deal that we need to, because what else could that guy would have done in during that period, during the time when he lost $1,000 doing that.
Right. That's the way to look at it too. And also the perspective of time is money. So like when you look at monetization and passive streams of income and all these different things, you know, if I work, let's say I work 50 hours a week in my primary job, and then I go coach, right? So that coaching is, you know, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, out of season. Then in season, it's 4 hours a day, 7 days a week. You look at that and you break it down and say, okay, what am I making? $1.37 an hour, right? So to me, if I assign myself like, all right, my hour is worth this amount of money, whatever it is, let's say it's $30, $40, $50, whatever. That's what my hours in labor. Yet I'm doing this for $1.37. That means I'm not doing it for money, you know? So the flip side with the promoters, you know, like if you got to run a big event like Michael Todd's event, like he had people flying in on Thursday, you got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 days where your entire time is dedicated to that. And that's could be potentially money lost elsewhere. And each one of those hours has a monetary value. So there's a lot of ways to look at it. But that's what separates it. If you're doing it not just for the money and you're getting like some type of like satisfaction out of providing a good product, then you can justify doing it. But if it's truly just work, I give it that per hour amount of money. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. If I don't enjoy doing it and I'm not making that dollar amount, I don't want to do it. And a lot of times that's what I say with the YouTube thing. There's just no way that, if I'm not liking it, which I like doing it. But yeah, it's never going to make me my per hour amount. So, but it's a huge sliding scale. And a lot of arm wrestlers look at it that way. They look at the travel and they look at the time off of work and say, well, I can make $400 a day at work, $300 a day at work, but I'm taking my leave and that leave is worth that amount of money. So when they're calculating where they want to go, they factor that stuff in.
Yeah, and to North Americans, it can be a difficult thing to understand. Some people can overestimate how easy it is to live in other like third world countries or other countries. And some people, most of them underestimate it, because I was talking with Krasimir and he told me that if you win Europeans or Worlds, their federation or government gives them 10,000 euros. And 10,000 euros, $10,000, it is the same, about the same now. So, and he told me that is enough if you're living outside of a big city and if you have your own apartment, that money is good enough for your entire year. They
Yep.
give you that much for 1 year and it is enough. You can live off of that. To North Americans, Australians, and many other people, it would seem crazy. Like, how can you live off $10,000 a year? But it is possible. For those guys, it is even more worth it to spend their time where they could potentially be losing money. Because in today's internet world, I've seen one thing: to make very less money, it is difficult. To make much more money, like crazy number of money, it is also difficult. But to make this average money like $1,000-$2,000 a month, like it has gotten really easy, like $1,500, which is sufficient for many countries in the world per month. That has become easy. Now it is getting difficult to decide like whether you should just sit at your home, make a good living, or you should travel, make connections, and build your brand even more.
Well, I mean, if you look at that from a motivation perspective too, like if 10,000 euros is equivalent to like, let's say $60,000 in
No,
income in the
same.
United States.
Same.
Yeah, if it's the same,
About the same.
if it's the same, and arm wrestlers had the opportunity to go win $60,000, we are going to see all the American arm wrestlers show up. But there's no way to achieve that with the way the economics of all, But it would be, I'll tell you what, you'd see a lot of more motivated Americans for sure.
Yeah, it has to be. Like sometimes the arm wrestling community, it wasn't like that. Two things that I always got mad at when I saw when in like 2, 3, 4 years ago. First of all, anyone would ask any question, any beginner, you can just tell by his question, by the wording that he has chosen, you can tell that he's a beginner. Sometimes a new arm wrestler would see a fascinating match from 2015 and he posted, wow, like amazing match, just saw this, have you seen this amazing match? And many arm wrestlers who think they are like the gods, like they know everything, the first comment that they would make is, have you been living under a rock? I hate this statement so much. Like it is one of the most hated statements that I have personally ever read. Have you been living under a rock? Like what kind of rude way is to introduce a new fan to arm wrestling just because you know that this match between Devon and Dennis happened in 2018 and somebody who started watching arm wrestling in 2022, it doesn't mean you have to disrespect that person. Like this thing I really hated. And second thing, that arm wrestling is slowly getting over it. They are now understanding that the more people that do not really know about arm wrestling, the more those kind of people we have in the sport, the bigger it is going to get. Because earlier, all of the comments were like, what is your experience in arm wrestling? If you have not won the nationals, if you have not done that much, like your opinion doesn't matter. But slowly arm wrestling is getting over this thing. Like Isa, the guy that hangs out with Hermes Gasparini, great talented guy. I've never met him, but just by watching his videos, you can tell. Like you can have a regular world champion arm wrestler sitting on a camera talking about something, he's not going to get 10,000 views. Isa, when he says something about arm wrestling, makes a video, is going to get 10,000 views. So I think this has helped a lot in changing the perspective of the arm wrestling fans who are so-called elites or pros in their own minds. Like I still to this date, like people tell me whenever I ask about something or answer something, like, why does your opinion matter? What have you done in the sport? Like, what have you
Right.
won? Have you won nationals? And I'm always like, you have won nationals. Nobody still knows you. Like, your opinion still doesn't. Your opinion may matter, but it may matter to 50 people. Nobody knows you. So I think this is a trade-off in today's world, and people
Yeah.
are getting over it. The more I'm telling you
Well,
about, the more people
it's
we
a
have.
maturity now.
Yeah.
It's maturing, really, is what it is. And I can speak from my own perspective in other sports. I remember going to college, like my first year, and my linebackers coach at the time didn't play linebacker in college. He was like a walk-on at like West Virginia or something. Didn't really have a notable career. And I remember talking about it with my peers, like, why are we like? Does this guy even know what he's talking about? He didn't play linebacker. How can he coach us? He's coaching us out of a book, and we're questioning it, right? For several years, I questioned this guy and coaches the linebackers at the Carolina Panthers. He's been coaching in the NFL for 15 years, and here I am, an 18-year-old kid saying, "Hey, why am I listening to you? You didn't play this position." The reality of it is, you don't have to have the previous experience if you have poured the amount of attention into the sport to understand it. So I think everyone's opinion matters, and we also see it. The newer arm wrestlers, we talked about it this.
Oh, Paul is frozen. I think till that time we should continue. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So I was saying that imagine telling someone that how are you allowed to vote for a president? Have you ever been a president yourself? I think my connection was bad. So I was saying that, like, imagine telling someone like, how can you talk about whether a president's work is good or not? Have you ever been a president yourself? Wouldn't it sound
Right.
silly? Like, it is what the arm wrestling community was doing till about a couple of years ago. Like, how can you talk about Devon versus Levan or Devon versus Denis Siplenkov? Are you even an arm wrestler? Are you even an arm wrestler? Do you even arm wrestle? This is another statement that I that I really hate. Like, you never question. Like, there are debates going on the news channels and stuff. There are hundreds of people talking about politics, talking about how bad Joe Biden is. He's falling off stairs and shit. You don't say that. How can you talk about Joe Biden? Have you ever been a president yourself? No, of course you can give your opinions. Coaching in a football team is still there, but just not being able to give your opinions about arm wrestling, any topic, is down here, and people are still like
Well, I
destroying
think a lot of times, like, competitors get jaded because of the crazy comments, and then they lump people in a box, right? Because what'll happen. A video will happen, match will happen. Everyone will perceive things differently, and there's always people who shoot from the hip and say crazy stuff, and it triggers people. And then they throw new arm wrestlers or inexperienced arm wrestlers in that box and say, "None of you guys know what you're talking about." But it's usually based off of some crazy comments by a few. And they're always out there too, and that can come from any experience level. I hear the craziest stuff ever. Everybody sees things different.
Yeah, my request to all of the arm wrestling community watching this video is, welcome the new audience with open arms. No matter how uneducated about the sport is, no matter how silly comments they are making, you do not want to scare them off just by saying that I've been arm wrestling for 10 years. How can you say anything in front of me? Please don't do that. So, talking about the event, the matches that we are undercard matches, what are the matches that you would like to talk about?
Good. This is a perfect transition because this piggybacks on exactly what we're saying. To me, two of the people I enjoyed spending the most time with there were Leroy Walker and Micaiah Paulk. These guys come from a strength background. Now, I was traveling for work, and I went to Michael's. I was close to him, 3 hours away. So I drove, and we did a workout and some table time, and Leroy happened to be there. I think this is the first time Leroy put his elbow on an arm wrestling table. And this guy's a strict curl world champion. He's done crazy numbers in bench. I think he can do like 600 something on the incline for reps. Like, he's a nut. He's super strong. But he didn't know how to arm wrestle at the time. So, doing typical newbie stuff, I'm able to just kind of hold him, and I'm helping him, trying to coach him up. So between now and then, but Micaiah was the same thing. I met him at the next one, and he was super strong. Had only competed in one tournament and was still very green, but super strong and better form. And you fast forward from those two interactions to now, and those guys are like Leroy. I after pulled with him when he gets his elbow to the back of the pad and starts dragging and pronating. Like I cannot just let him do that, or I'm not going to bring him back, And there's some after pull videos and stuff. These guys are serious. Like when you take these guys with these mega strength backgrounds, like Larry Wheels for example, anybody who thinks Larry's not getting better is living under a rock or is not seeing from the correct perspective. Larry is getting way better, and Larry is going to be scary, and all of these guys can be. And I remember talking to these Micaiah and Leroy at the after party, and I was like, a lot of times what happens is people see you guys and they see you as a target. Like, I'm going to come to practice and smash this huge guy and get it on video. And then when they can't, then they don't want to show you anything because they're like, I don't want this guy, or the potential of that strength background can be intimidating for long-time arm wrestlers who don't have it. So I think we're getting better as a community at welcoming these people in. I love it. I think it's great. Like that demographic, like into like strict curl or powerlifting is huge. The more of those guys we get, the better. We can't worry about them taking the sport over. I don't know if anybody's actively thinking about that, but I think it's more subconscious. But these guys have a mega ceiling. Unfortunately, in that match, Leroy tweaked something in his bicep, kind of because of the way he's pulling. He's still pulling, open top roll, which puts a lot of pressure on the bicep. But I thought that match was shaking out to be really, really good. Yeah. And I had Micaiah in a landslide because I've grabbed Micaiah, and he's a little bit more arm wrestling IQ is a little bit higher.
Yeah.
But when Leroy got the stop, he asked me to corner him. Both of them asked me to corner him, but Leroy got to me first. And I'm like, I tried to be positive. In the back of my head, I'm like, oh no, it's gonna be bad. And he got the stop, and I was like, ooh, this is gonna be good now, And then unfortunately, we had the injury, but I think he might have got another stop in the third round if there isn't one. So if there was no injury. So that one was fun for me. And then interacting with those guys was fun.
I think Micaiah arm wrestled perfectly in that match because on the screen, as we can see, there were some moments where his wrist could have cracked. Like if he went a little bit more sideways, if he had not been patient there, like slowly pronating through, there was a moment where his own wrist was also kind of going back, but he stayed there. He kept his calm, and then he trusted his endurance in his hand and wrist, and it paid dividends for him, and then he was able to win it. But it was like, man, don't go sideways. Like there was a hand battle in the center. Like if he went sideways, he would have lost his own wrist, in my opinion. I think he arm wrestled perfectly to win that match.
That dude's good. Okay, he's going to be really good. I think he's got one tournament and one super match under his belt, like less than a year, and I think if he easily could beat some people on the top 22-42 list in the United States right now, left and right. Yeah. Which is, again, you're scared of it. You're very scared because he's only going to get stronger. He's only going to get smarter, and he's into it. He's committed. He got bit by the bug. So, yeah, that was a good one. And some of the other undercards. I don't think we talk enough about Dustin Hyatt. I don't know if you know Dustin Hyatt. He's about a 176 guy. He's he's like 21. The kid is he's a dog. He was supposed to arm wrestle Roman Gromov, but his entire family got ill right before. So he took a match against another local guy that he had history against. And Dustin is just a stud. Like Dustin is ready for like the top ranks. And he's talk about another young, like just gifted kid who is just breathing and eating this sport only. He's going to be a scary, scary dude. I hope he gets a replacement match with a high-level guy really soon.
You know how I guessed, or prediction would not be a right word, how I guessed the winners of these undercard matches. It was a funny way. Dustin Hyatt versus Roman Gromov. That was the match. Roman Gromov is out, but I know how good Roman Gromov is. So Michael and Rebecca must have thought something while they were setting up Dustin Hyatt against Roman. So I thought last minute replacement, no matter who he is, he cannot be as good as Roman. I think Dustin is going to win this match. This is how I predicted that match. Dustin won it.
He was sleepwalking a little bit in the first round. I think he was pretty dejected because he found out like the day before that Roman wasn't going to be there. But when he turned it on, the gap was huge.
Yeah. Another match, Bob Brown versus Kyle Howarth. How I predicted this match, of course, I have never seen Kyle Howarth arm wrestle. I've seen him in a few podcasts, but I've never seen him arm wrestle. And when I heard Ryan Bowen say that this is going to be a close match, I know that whatever Ryan says about any Australian arm wrestler, you minus 30% off that immediately. So that is why I thought Bob Brown is going to win this 3-0. There is absolutely no way Kyle Howarth is going to win, just because Ryan Bowen said so, that Kyle can win this match. or he
Bob Brown's, Bob Brown's really good, and you can't make mistakes against that open top roll.
Yeah.
I think he might have a less range of motion than Michael Todd in that elbow.
Yeah.
And now he went and got the stem cells and everything, and he's healthy and he's got less pain, and he's just a really, really good arm wrestler. I was actually kind of impressed with Kyle, how he kind of elongated the match. You know, he went forward against that and tried to cup it and supinate it, which is probably the hardest lane that you can take. And he still had some stops and made it, you know, a fairly decent match. So when I seen him coming forward, I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad, especially after seeing what Bob did with Bill Logsdon. I mean, to me, that was super impressive. So I think, and I talked to Kyle afterwards, I think, like, you know, I thought it was a good showing for him, because I think Bob's in very, very good form.
Yeah. And the Leroy Walker versus Micaiah match, I thought that I just do not like the way Leroy Walker arm wrestles. Like when he started, like he was literally like basically like a robot arm wrestling going sideways. And I'm like, no way he has learned enough technique in that little period of time. And I was just like, no, he's going to lose this match.
Really sticky and stiff in two positions. It's getting to him that matters. Like when he turns and has his elbow out and has his wrist flexed, he's really tough. You know, you got to figure you're pulling against that bicep. He's on top of you. It's tough. But naturally, he wants to lat drag, you know, and prune, like just with his wrist kind of back and just roll through his thumb. He just naturally, subconsciously kind of wants to do that. And I think that was probably, even though it's not the greatest thing to do and you're new, was probably the best lane against Micaiah. So unfortunately, he tweaked the bicep, but I don't think there's anything structural. There was no deformity, no roll up or anything like that. I think it was just kind of a muscle strain.
And Paul, what you just mentioned, I would like to ask you one training question. Like, I always felt comfortable in this position, especially on the left arm. Like Corey Miller calls it the chicken wing position. Like you are in a hook and you are pronated. Like Engin was talking about Irakli Gamtanadze as well. His style that he is in a hook, but since he's leaning that way, he has pronation. If he just stands this way, he's palm up. He does not have any pronation. But just because he's leaning that way without actually pronating, he has some pronation in this position. So
where did we leave off? The chicken wing position you were saying.
So I always felt comfortable in this position.
Ryan, the Barnett brothers over there in Australia do it great. It's kind of like they call it the King's Hook. I have a hard time getting there, but when I find myself there, I feel really good, you know. But it's solid because you're really, you know, your elbow is like outside of your shoulder, so you have your shoulder in, and if you have a good sticky bicep and a decent pronator, you're not in a bad spot. It's very hard to pin, especially if you go over a side. But that's where it gets tricky. Then the pin requires coming under the table a little bit.
Or pressing, standing up and pressing.
Yeah.
In my first event, I found myself in that position. So I was trying to pronate and go down, but eventually I got hooked and I was in this position, like offensive position. And there is no way I could just finish from this position. So I had to stand up and then press. But I think it is an amazing position. I once thought, let's try it the Demilat way. Just bring everything close to you. And it was just a warm-up pull. And I was going maybe 80%. And I heard like 2-3 pops or tears in the inside part of my elbow. And it has been over 2 years and it still hurts. Even now when I sleep like this, it still hurts. So is it worth it? Like I wasn't even going full force and I still damaged my elbow just by trying to be closer to my body, trying to be in this position, trying to involve the joints, even at 70% effort. And I can go 100% in this position all day long and I feel more stronger there.
The pops that I've had in my elbow have usually come in practice in that position. So I think it's about figuring out your anatomy and then developing, you know, that durability in those joints. I definitely didn't have it early on. I still don't think that I'm a structural puller. I remember pulling with Brandon Elsesser 3 years ago, right before COVID. and we were pulling in practice. We were right at the end. We're like, let's pull one more time. Let's go on a hook. And I stood up, posted my leg off the table this way, and sat like this. And he yanked, and pop, pop, pop. And it was like 2 years where I couldn't be in that position,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like I tested it. It didn't hold up. My left was tweaked for like 2 years. So you live and learn. I would absolutely love to get into a condition where I could feel comfortable. There are certain anatomical things that limit all of us. For me, slamming sideways and shoulder rolling is the fear of that elbow plus the labrum. So, like, those are the things that limit our moves and our repertoire. It's not that you can't do them, just you got subconscious concern, you know? You got to figure out what works for you.
Another match.
Devin talks about all the time. All the injuries he's had has brought him into the rising phase. Everything is rising now. That's where he can arm wrestle, you know, without pain, with all the damage he has all over his arm and shoulder. There's always a lane.
And next match, Brent Rakers versus Joe Fox. So we saw.
If you don't know Brent, he's a stud.
He's a stud, but we saw him against Adam Wrzynski, and Wrzynski was like just curling him in and beating him. It was like a practice session for him. And Joe Fox, at one point of time, he was trying to get in the top 8, 95 kg division. And he got somewhat of a good fight in first 1 or 2 rounds to Raymond Antonovich, who ended up beating him. But like, how is this gap? Joe Fox tries to go to top 8, then he loses to Brent Rakers, and Brent Rakers gets destroyed by Wrzynski.
The top 8 was based off of qualification, I think. It wasn't like handpicked at that weight. And that's not to take anything away from Raymond's or Joe or anyone. You know, they earned their spot. And I think Joe's at a really high level. I think Joe said the first or second round he had a pop. So I think Brent most likely would have won the match regardless, stylistically. But I think that there was a little bit of damage that made the gap look a little bit bigger. Brent has an interesting style. So, like, when you talk about the Wrzynski matchup, like, it never comes down to, you know, if puller A beats puller B and puller C and all that nonsense that we all get caught up in. It's stylistic, you know? Like, Brent has that, like, Jordan Sill style where he'll kind of kick that wrist up a little bit and get into this. If he gets into your pinky, like, if he sets it, you're not pinning it. You know what I mean? But there's certain guys that have contrasting styles, with Wrzynski having that huge hand and that great supination. If he turns that in before that little kick comes in, it can look different, you know? But Brent is a well-rounded arm wrestler. He's super straight. He's good inside. He's good outside. And he's really good with that kick low hand feel. And his hand's strong. So, like, he's very diverse. I think that this is a guy that should be potentially on the radar at that 95 kilogram mark. Brent's a guy, as long as I've known him, as long as I've been around, he's one of those guys, great genetics. He doesn't really cut weight. He just kind of always walks around between 210 and like 200. And like, when he's telling me about how he cuts weight, he's like, I just like drink shakes and I drop a bunch, you know, I'll just lose weight that way. He's 48 years old and he looks like he's in his 20s, you know. He doesn't do a whole lot of social media, but I mean, when it comes to like over here in the United States, that 200, 209, he can make either of them. He's a stud for sure. And he's a good dude.
I would have never guessed he's 48. No.
Yeah. How would you?
Yeah. I would have said maybe 38. Yeah. And
he's been around forever too. I mean, when you look at his history and because he's not as active, I mean, he won the Triple Crown, which was, you know, winning all 3 nationals. I think he might have done that several times. He's had a long time heated rivalry with RBJ. They've gone back and forth, you know. But every once in a while, you see him lose to somebody you don't expect him to lose to. And I think it's more stylistic than anything.
And Rebecca versus Sarah Latona. In this match, this match, I was doing commentary and Sarah joined the chat. And I asked her, like, how long you have been arm wrestling for. And she told me that 4 months for this match and 4 years in total. And I've never seen her arm wrestle. I had never seen her before. Like, it was the first time I saw Sarah Latona. And I was like, you're going to win it. And the reason I gave for that is because I've seen Rebecca's practice pool. Like, she practices a lot, even in those tours against some CrossFit girls, some strong girls, powerlifters and stuff. And we have seen that even outside of straps, if Rebecca doesn't get everything off the setup, Like if she doesn't get everything, even without the straps, if the other girl is strong, she has good biceps and shoulders, I've seen the like people can just push Rebecca to the pad, and inside the straps most of the times against stronger women we have seen her lose on video. So I was like, the if arm power should be enough. If she has been training for 4 years, I think she got it. Like Rebecca in one live stream, somebody asked him about arm wrestling me, and she was like, I will beat Pradeep Singh, but I do not arm wrestle. I do not arm wrestle, man. I was like, okay. But like, how did you see this match?
I mean, I think really it comes down to Sarah being like she's gung ho. You know what I mean? She's super into the sport. She's living it and breathing it. Her husband's an arm wrestler, doing a podcast with Brandon Allen. Like they're living it. And Rebecca is kind of making a comeback. So to me, when I look at that, like Michael and Rebecca did the body transformation and everything, and I don't know how much of a focus arm wrestling was in that for Rebecca. So, I mean, do I think it could have gone another way if this was like early in Rebecca's career and she was dead set on arm wrestling only? But they have so much going on. And I'll say this too, not to take anything away from Sarah, she looked great. But for Michael and Rebecca to put on that production and then also get up from commentary and then go arm wrestle, that's a terrible, terrible thing to be. That's not a good place to be. I've been there. I don't arm wrestle at Moen tournaments anymore. People ask me why. I say, are you kidding me? Like my stress level's through the roof, and now you want me to go up here and arm wrestle these killers when I'm cold and I was just running around? Nah, I'm not going to do it. It's not worth it. So I mean, I don't like. I think regardless of those factors, I think Sarah was in pretty good shape that day. I didn't really have a prediction for that match because I had never met Sarah either until that point. But super impressive, very impressive. Both her and Jason are awesome. And they're doing good things. And I think Sarah, she's really like beating the drum for women's arm wrestling, which is what we need over there. We need more women they're rally crying for more women.
Yeah. And it is difficult, man, but they took it well. Like Rebecca lost her match. Michael also lost his match, but they still took it well. Like they focused on the production. They focused on the success of the event more than their actual matches, which can be not so positive for themselves, but it was definitely good for all of us. So thank you very much everyone for being patient to watch this till the end. It is the first part. Second part, please switch over to Paul Linn's YouTube channel. Before that, subscribe to my channel, like the video, and we'll see you on Paul's channel. Thank you very much. All the juicy stuff, the main card 5 matches are going to be on that channel. Thanks everyone.